These dusty little things, after being whispered to promises of sunshine, can become an entire family of spuds. And as with some corners of the internet that I've seen, it'll see that its peak existence is actually being feasted upon. Potatoes have been rated as the most satiating food. And to be honest, I don't know how you can put a quantitative measure of that, but what I can say, compared to the time when I was a toddler and I was in my mother's arms being rocked to sleep, eating a pound of potatoes is probably a close second to the most comforted that I've ever felt. And the only thing better than eating a pound of potatoes is the smug feeling of knowing that you grew those potatoes yourself. And considering that the act of growing them amounts to preparing a bit of soil and sticking them in the ground, to me it feels like a worthwhile investment. The potato can grow from any of the eyes, so if you cut it in half, you should double the yield in theory. And I had 24 potatoes. We're not Leonardo DiCaprio, so there's no need to stop at 24. Just so you can see what I'm doing, I've notched in along here 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, and then the boards are 4 feet long. And then the rows are 2 feet apart. The board allows me to walk onto the area without compacting the soil, but it also helps me to plant them into straight lines so I can maximise the spacings. And then, just so it's easier for the potato to get itself out of the ground, I just point the eyes upwards. If you are to cut the potato, it is better to cut it and then leave it to callus over. But today's the only day that I've got to plant them, so I forgot to cut them prior to doing it, which would have been a good idea, but whatever, didn't happen. I'm growing potatoes in this area. It's because they're a pretty good crop to use to break new ground, because in preparation for them you break the ground, and then when you get them back up out of the ground you can do it again. So you've got 2 opportunities to get rid of a lot of perennial weeds as you dig them out, and while they're growing they're actually quite competitive with the weeds that are there, so they don't get too crowded out by them. Especially with this mare's tail, I find that the areas where I started off with potatoes on this allotment have been easier to manage after I've grown potatoes in them. So it's not scientific, but that's just been my experience. Although you absolutely can grow potatoes from these supermarket potatoes, in fact, you can see that this one has actually got some sprouts on it. If I show you another one, you can't see any sprouts on it at all. And that's because a lot of them are treated with a sprout inhibitor. So that's going to mean that you're going to get uneven sprouting or chitting. So if you're going to go to the trouble of preparing an area of soil, or getting a load of containers and spending money on compost and stuff to fill the containers, the last thing you want to do is cheap out on a few pence by trying to buy supermarket potatoes just because you couldn't be bothered to go to the garden centre or go online and order some specific seed potatoes from which you're going to have way better results. It's worth the investment of getting seed potatoes for the other reason that you've got way more varieties and interesting, tasty varieties of potato that you probably can't find in the shops too easily. Anyway, too much waffling, not enough potato eating. You know, sometimes where you hear those radio phone-ins where they talk about things that you can do for your friends if they're experiencing anxiety or depression, and they often go through things like telling them it's okay to not be okay, and a lot of wishy-washy stuff. I've got a better suggestion. Call them and brainstorm ways that you can consume potatoes in different ways together. doing it anyway. I'm just going to put it down there. See that slightly odd reaction to the chitting. Because they're indeterminate, I haven't filled the tub with compost because they're Maris Piper. So once they come out of the ground, I'll put some more compost on the top of them, and that should mean that they'll form more tubers into this layer as well as the one below it. We'll see how we get on. They'll definitely grow, but like I said before, the investment in just getting some seed potatoes is usually well worthwhile, and if you're a little bit impatient, it's really worthwhile, because otherwise you're going to have to wait for that the sprouting inhibitor, to wear off as you store them for a while until they're actually even going to sprout. If you're excited by growing supermarket potatoes, which I can sort of see the appeal, there is like a childhood science project feel to it.